The Martian dusk was settling when Perseverance sent its last clear image. The sky glowed in copper and crimson, and shadows stretched long across the Jezero Crater floor. Everything had been routine that soul. The rover was analyzing mineral samples from a ridge near the ancient delta, its instruments humming softly under the thin Martian wind. Then, without warning, the cameras flickered. For 3 seconds, the feed turned white and overload, as if the sensors had caught a burst of invisible light. When the video returned, something unusual appeared in the corner of the frame, a glint, metallic and moving against the still horizon. Mission control at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory paused. Operators thought it might be lens flare or dust kicked up by the wind. But Mars doesn't have winds that strong. Not there, not that time of day. Telemetry data spiked. A sudden electromagnetic surge registered across the rover's instruments. One of the engineers whispered, "We just got hit with something." On screen, a shadow drifted closer. It wasn't dust. It had formed a curved, irregular silhouette hovering just above the surface, pulsing faintly. Perseverance's hazard cameras captured it next. The shape shimmered, then split into two, like liquid metal dividing itself. Both halves drifted toward the rover. JPL's main room erupted into nervous chatter. Commands were sent to switch to defensive standby, essentially, safe mode. But before the signal could transmit, static filled every channel. The rover's microphone caught faint crackling sounds, as if the very air around it were vibrating. Mars, normally silent, seemed to hum. Then came a soft tap. One of the rover's robotic arms registered an impact. A second later, the navigation camera showed a dark smear across its casing. Something was touching it. Scientists couldn't believe what they were seeing. The object seemed to crawl, yet no biological motion was visible. It glowed at the edges, bending light in unnatural ways. Is it plasma? Someone asked. Or nanomaterial? No one had an answer. The object expanded, covering half of the rover's front panel. Readings dropped sharply. Battery output plummeted by 40%. IT was feeding draining energy from Perseverance. In a desperate attempt, the team triggered an emergency system reboot. For a brief moment, the cameras powered off, then on again. When they did, the object was gone. Only faint, smoking scorch marks remained across the rover's metallic surface. Relief rippled through the control room until a new alert flashed. The Ingenuity helicopter, parked several meters away, had just gone offline. The final image transmitted by Ingenuity showed a distorted reflection, a smooth, silver curve rising behind the rover, like a floating mirror catching the Martian sunset. Radio interference swept through the Martian relay satellites. Perseverance's communication dropped to a whisper, 1 weak heartbeat every few minutes. NASA declared a communication blackout, citing unexpected electromagnetic anomalies. The public statement was calm, careful, clinical. But inside the lab, panic brewed. Analysts studying the last frames noticed something eerie. The shape of the object was changing, adapting. Its patterns resembled fractal geometry, self-replicating, intelligent design. A few theorists proposed that it might not be an organism, but a machine. Perhaps an autonomous sentinel, ancient and still operational, guarding something buried deep beneath Jezero. Others whispered that Perseverance had awakened something that was never meant to be disturbed. Days turned into weeks. Attempts to re-establish full communication failed. Only fragmented pings came back, short bursts of data, almost like encoded replies. When decoded, one packet of data contained a strange signal, not random, not natural. It repeated 3 geometric symbols, a circle, a triangle, and a spiral. Experts argued endlessly over their meaning. Some saw them as coordinates. Others thought they were a warning. By the time the next satellite pass over Jezero occurred, Perseverance had stopped transmitting entirely. Its beacon, once steady, was silent. Orbiters later captured faint disturbances in the sand around its last known location, circular trails, perfectly even, expanding outward from the rover's position. NASA officially listed the cause of the failure as severe environmental interference. But unofficially, whispers continued in every mission hallway. Something had found Perseverance that day. Something old. Something that moved like light and fed on electricity. And as the red dust reclaimed the tracks of the rover, a dim glow flickered once more on the horizon, brief, pulsing, almost like a signal waiting for a reply. Mars had grown quieter than ever, at least according to the data feeds. No transmissions, no echoes, only the endless hum of background radiation. NASA never announced a recovery plan publicly. But behind closed doors, a classified mission was already in motion. Its codename, Aegis Dawn. Aegis Dawn's purpose was simple on paper: send a small autonomous lander to investigate the Perseverance site. But in reality, it was anything but simple. The data from the rover's final transmission still haunted the engineers. The symbols, the circle, the triangle, and the spiral, remained unsolved. Some believed they were coordinates, pointing to something deeper beneath Jezero Crater. Others thought they represented communication, a pattern meant to be understood. When the Aegis probe was launched, it carried new shielding and encrypted quantum telemetry to prevent interference. NASA wasn't taking chances this time. The craft touched down near Perseverance's last known position during the Martian dawn. When the planet's thin air shimmered with orange light, its cameras scanned the horizon. No sign of the rover, only faint, circular impressions in the dust, perfectly symmetrical, stretching hundreds of meters outward. The probe advanced slowly, radar scanning beneath the surface. What it found chilled the mission team: a massive sublayer of metal, buried beneath 5 meters of regolith. At first they thought it was a meteorite impact zone. But the shape was too geometric, hexagonal, precise, artificial. When the probe's drill began sampling, the ground vibrated. The seismic sensors registered rhythmic pulses, almost like a heartbeat. Then came the flash. A blinding surge of blue-white light erupted from the soil, cutting through the Martian haze. For 12 seconds, every sensor on the probe went dead. When the systems came back online, the live camera feed showed something standing there. It wasn't Perseverance. It was something else. A structure, faintly luminous, smooth as glass, rising slowly from the ground. Mission control fell silent. No one spoke as the shape unfolded, segments separating and locking into place like petals of an enormous metallic flower. The structure emitted a low resonance, not quite sound, not quite vibration. Instruments detected patterns, complex, repeating, as if coded language. In a desperate attempt, engineers sent a transmission using the old Perseverance signal format. The structure responded instantly. It projected light across the dust, forming symbols in midair, the same circle, triangle, and spiral, but now surrounded by hundreds of others. The meaning was clear. This was not an attack, it was an answer. Deep spectrum analysis showed the light carried compressed data. When decoded, it revealed schematics of something resembling energy conduits, reactors, and oddly, organic cell structures. NASA scientists were stunned. The patterns hinted at a fusion between biology and technology, a civilization that didn't separate life from machine. But before they could study it further, the probe's readings shifted. Radiation levels spiked. A shadow moved behind the glowing structure. It was floating, small, silent, and eerily familiar. The same silver entity that had drained Perseverance 2 years before. The object approached the probe, hovering inches away. Then, without warning, it touched the camera lens. The feed dissolved into static. The last frame transmitted showed the glowing structure collapsing back into the dust, as if it had never existed. Mission logs ended abruptly. The Aegis Dawn probe was lost. Weeks later, Mars orbiters detected a faint repeating signal coming from Jezero Crater. The same 3 symbols again, this time, accompanied by a fourth, an open eye. NASA never released that data publicly. The world was told Aegis Dawn failed during landing, but among those who saw the final signal, one truth became impossible to ignore: Perseverance hadn't been destroyed. It had been taken, and something on Mars had finally decided to speak back.